Good day, and welcome back to Common Man's Corner. My name is Wayne,
Brian.
and Common Man's Corner is a chat show about what affects the common man. Any topics, fair game. Just to recap a little bit about last week there, we talked about money and how the issues with it and stuff like that, and Brian had some pretty interesting views about how we don't need it at all, and I don't necessarily disagree with some of his views. I don't necessarily agree with all of them, like everything else, but I do believe we have a flawed system with it. A couple of key points we talked about last week when we didn't get off topic there with the communism and stuff is about bank loans and mortgages and stuff like that. And I mentioned how if there should be one done through the government at a preset amount, that way if you're borrowing say 50,000 for your house, you agree to pay back the local provincial government say 65,000 or 70 or 75, even half again as much, whatever it is. And that way you do see the light at the end of the tunnel, as opposed to the term mortgage of life for debt or debt life.
Yeah.
The other topic we really got onto was student loans, which I have a similar opinion that if we can't get free education, which me and Brian both pretty much agree that it should be free, especially in our country. A lot of other countries already have it.
Sure,
why
yeah.
do we have to always be sucking hind tit onto it? I don't know, but we do. Barring it's not going to be free, which it should be. I believe there should be a student loan system set up that you don't have to go to a bank for it or a private institution or whatever else where they get to keep changing the rules, or yeah, you're going to pay back this percentage, we'll say whatever it is, 2.3% over prime, fluctuating depending on what color underwear the CEO was wearing that week or whatever else he feels like,
Yeah.
or she. Nothing said there, ladies. When I say the term he in a position of power or authority, it means him or her or whoever. It's just a term. I don't believe there's anything except for maybe having babies that should be reserved for women, because they're much better at it than any man I know of doing it.
Yeah.
So, aside from that, it's all good. So anyway, back onto this here. Student loans, if they're not free, I think the government should provide them, as opposed to banks, because that way it's a preset amount. If you're borrowing 10 grand, you've agreed to pay back your provincial level government, we'll say, 14 grand, 15, 16, 21, whatever it is, a set number, and that way it never goes up. Like, it's not going to keep growing and keep growing and keep growing, so that you figure, yeah, I can be out in 5 years, and then you get a few hiccups or whatever, and all of a sudden, or the market changes in Taiwan, which somehow affects the oil price in Kuwait, then all of a sudden it changes to how much oil the Russians are shipping out, and then next thing you know, well, your 5 years has turned into 7.5 years because, Donald Trump had eggs for breakfast.
Yeah.
Like, their equations are right off the wall here. And yes, if you talk to the guys who claim they know economics, this and that, which I don't think they actually know economics, because no one really does. It's all what you know this year as opposed to last year and how they can stiff you.
Yeah.
People should see the light at the end of the tunnel, I think, and especially with student loans. In a few moments here, I think Brian's going to explain a few things about student loans and how he thinks here to go. But my opinion is, if you are going to pay for a secondary education, it shouldn't happen. But if you are going to pay for it, there should be a light at the end of the tunnel, and it should be a set amount. Example being, if you borrow 10 grand, it should go through the province or the federal level, if that's what level you need to go to, whatever has to be worked out for the finer details. But that's what you pay back, or it's an agreed upon amount to be paid back. And I think you'd have a lot less stiffing of the problems. But when you go to a bank or a private institution or lending cartels, you might as well say, mafia of it, you're never getting out of it. And it's because they don't want you out of it, and that's how they make their money, and I understand that. But there should be other options for someone to get an education and be able to further themselves or their family or whatever else.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, education really should be a public service that should be available to everybody for free. Like, not only are you educating your populace, that has so many repercussions down the line as well. You get more educated discussion and debates in politics. You get more educated people in politics. You know, everything just kind of improves once the education of your masses improves. Like, problems can be solved. Education's out there to solve them. So I think, personally, education should be free. That's a personal opinion, but there's laws that back it up. Like, we signed on to the UN's Covenant on Economic, Cultural, and Education Rights in '76. And since then, really, education is supposed to be free. And Article 14 of that says that Canada, or as a signatory to it, should be introducing progressive free education, starting with post-secondary education and then moving on to higher education as well. So we've already agreed to it. It's already law that we're supposed to be offering free education. That was back in '76. We're supposed to be, we agreed, we promised, signed a covenant to increase or have progressive education, and since then really our education has gone down, our tuition's gone up. Really, we haven't held up to our promise on that at all. The government certainly hasn't held it up to us, right? So I mean, really, we already signed on to it, we already agreed education should be free, so why aren't we really upholding our promise to do it? Like,
Too much money to be made.
Yeah, exactly, like, it's all about the money again, like.
Well, a lot of it goes back to it, and I don't think education is any different with a secondary or whatever else. If they can make an extra tax dollar, they're going to take it, which is fine. Make the extra tax dollar, pay for improvements in the country. The problem is, all I see myself from looking into things isn't that there's no improvements. I mean, things have improved in the last, from 50 years ago, in some ways anyway. The infrastructure is bigger, whatever else. But what I do see improve drastically is the amount of government we now have. Where before, it was a relatively low population ratio. Like, for instance, you had one government official for every 500 people, and now it seems like you got one government official for every 5 people, kind of. And that's a bit disproportionate, of course.
Yeah.
But there is a lot more. Every single person have 3 assistants. Each one of those have 2 extra secretarial or administrative assistants, and these are all pensionable positions, chewing up the money. So they need to make the extra money somehow. And you're going to hear me say this on a lot of topics, on laws, on fines, on penalties, on taxes, on everything. It's not done for what we are taught or showed, I think. And yeah, I know some, or shown, sorry, not showed. Good English for you. Some people are going to say conspiracy nut and da, but like, really think about this here. Look at the size of our government we have now. Look at the size of the government we had 1960, 1950. Yes, we do more and we're into more things, so I understand a portion of the amount to go up, but this has gone up drastically at all levels, at municipal levels, at provincial levels, and at federal levels, not just in our country. And it's like that with everywhere too. I mean, like, look at the military, just to get off topic here for hopefully only a few seconds, but with the military, for instance, during the war we had something like 4 or 6 generals, right? During peacetime now, which, let's face it, we are at peacetime, we're not at a world level of war and stuff like that, even though some of our leaders keep wanting to drag us into every nickel fight that we can find.
Dragged into wars.
Pay a quarter to get into a nickel fight, but anyway. We have something like 26. 26. When, a full quarter of the military, which, guys, I'm pro-military, support your troops.
26.
And we have like a retarded amount of generals now, but like a large chunk of our forces are on paper only. They don't actually exist in real people, real boots on the ground, real machines can go to the field, real ammos and bullets. They're top heavy. And it's because everybody needs an assistant. And wait a minute here now, I've been doing for this long and I got this position and I can't make you the same I am there, buddy George, but I can get you a position half a step below me. We'll make up a spot for you.
Right.
And then a little bit later on, the right things get done, because it's been around for a long time now, and all of a sudden now you're the same as me, just where we wanted it, but now there's 2 of us. Well, each one of us is going to now make a position just below us for our other friends, and sort of like the Senate. Let's just make a few more in here. Let's get a few more of the old gentlemen's club, or ladies, you know what I mean though. Let's get the old boys club going here and make it a little bigger. But only if you pull the right strings, Mr. President, or Mr. Prime Minister, or Mr. Chairman of the board, or whatever type deal, right?
Yeah.
Everyone wants to grow them the same. And get positions for life, and in turn get pensions after what? We're at, what is it? 8 years, 6 years, 2 terms, or a term and a half now. And one of the groups, one of the parties here, I think it's the Liberals here or whatever, they were trying to get it so that you can get it in just under 2 years. You can get a pension if you're a politician.
Man.
And when asked why, their excuse being, yeah, but you see, you're at the whim of so many people, whether they like you or not. You don't know if you're going to be in that job long enough or not. So if your forces can wear a uniform and have to do 25 years to get a pension, there's no damn reason why a guy wearing a suit in an air-conditioned office with so many things paid for him should be fucking getting it after 2 years. That's just my opinion.
Takes no risks, exactly.
But on that note, Now, in my opinion, that's why education can't be free, and that's why tuitions have to be up, and that's why the bank systems have to be supported, because we're paying for a top-heavy system of the top paychecks.
Yeah.
Like, it's not we're paying for the mediocres in the middles. We're paying for people that are making top dollar,
That's right.
and we're paying for a hell of a lot more than there ever was before, and it has to be paid for by somebody. And now you were saying it was what 76? Very quick here to go back to your topic here. We signed on to this here.
Yeah.
39 years. I mean,
Yeah.
they could be working toward this.
Yeah. We could have had free education a long time ago. Well, I mean, considering just before I come here, I was looking at there's at least seven other countries on the planet right now that offer free education, that signed on to that covenant, that offer free education, even to foreign students.
Yeah, but they can't be doing as well off as us in Canada are. I mean,
They're doing way better than us. You're talking about places like Sweden, Finland, Norway, Germany.
come on now.
They're all
There's
doing pretty good.
no way they could be doing better than good old Canada here.
I know.
I mean, we
right?
have the largest basin of the natural resources in the world.
Yeah.
We actually have more oil under our dirt than Saudi Arabia does, yet they control the oil flow.
Part of that convention required that Canada submit reports every so often on how they're doing to keep up with it. And the last one was in 2013, and I read a chunk of it. And all they complained about, like the UN complained that Canada had done nothing. It was their Canada's sixth report, and Canada had not followed any of the recommendations that the EU had suggested. None of them. And through 6 reports, Canada hadn't done any of them. Like, we signed on that piece of paper and forgot about it, is what we did. Like,
Oh no, they didn't forget about it. They didn't give a damn about it.
yeah, exactly.
Right. But let's clear this up. None of the other countries in the world can possibly do it better than we are, because we
Sure.
know that it doesn't work, because we have to be right,
Yeah,
because we're doing so great.
Yeah.
Now, but don't get me wrong here. This is going to sound like kind of unpatriotic and da-da-da. I'm very proud to be a Canadian. I think Canada has done so many wonderful things
Yeah.
in the past and the potential of in the future. I think we're just getting kind of astray trying to follow the wrong roads right now and whatever else. In some ways, in other ways, we're leading the charge. Very few ways. But I'm sure, I mean, let's face it, Brian, it's only been 39 years.
Only 39.
It's only 39. I'm sure that there's a master goal that all of a sudden it's all going to come right around, and people like us,
Sure, it's
the common man, can't possibly understand what their long-term
No.
4,000 year goal is here or something.
We just got to let their will be done. That's all.
Yeah, there will be done, and it'll all work out for the best, 100% guarantee.
Absolutely.
Because we all know
Absolutely.
that the government, which is taking the biggest pensions and the biggest paychecks and the biggest bonuses and the biggest,
Yeah.
being able to take the most money illegally, and at most have to pay it back, yet take a fine or
Yeah.
lose their pensions. Nope, not going to happen. We all know that the common man's personal welfare is the forefront of, and I don't mean on an individual basis. This is, with some of our bitching and complaining, it may seem like these guys just have a sore spot because they're not getting ahead themselves. Absolutely not.
No.
I'm a strong believer in a country over an individual. As a group in society, I mean, the needs of the many should really outweigh the needs of the one in many cases, in my opinion. I'm not anti-individualism.
We might just argue the numbers on that. That's
Right, the amounts could
Yeah.
argue a bit, but in the end, overall, I mean, if you have to lose a small town to save a whole country, then you lose a small town. I mean, it's just numbers, it's the way it is.
Sure.
If I got to throw away, if I got to throw away the potatoes because we burnt them, you don't throw away the whole turkey dinner with all the fixings and the dressing and the
That's right.
that pumpkin pie. You know what I mean? Like, but on the other hand,
I also don't think that 51% of the population should be able to take away the rights of the other 49%. Should be a big higher number in there.
well, yeah,
So-
I
so-
think that should happen on a lot of things, though.
It's like 2 wolves and a sheep voting on what's for supper. Like, it's not going to work out there for somebody.
That's how it's going to
For a
happen.
good chunk of those people.
But yeah, I see where you're going with that there. Yeah, I don't agree with just a small margin. Like the
Yeah.
needs of the many should have to be a vast majority, not just
a vast majority, yeah.
like gee, there's 100 people like you said, and 51 want pizza for supper, and
That's 49 people that are getting screwed. Like, that's a...
I can't eat pizza. Doesn't matter. You're eating it anyway 'cause that's what we
Right.
want. Like
That's
I understand that.
I mean, yes, it's 51%, but that's a 49% that didn't want what you wanted. That's a big number. Like,
That's too big of a number. I
it
agree.
is. It's too big of a number.
And get back on here, free education should be there. Come on, Canada, just
It kind of is. It
I-
kind of is. If you read the Canada Student Loans Act, That one is section 19. It's called set off or limitations, and it states right in the Canada Student Loans Act that if you do not acknowledge the loan for 6 years, and after that the government can no longer legally come after you for that money. They can do things like take away your returns, or if you had GST returns or income tax returns, you wouldn't get those back, but they can't take you to court and force you to pay that money anymore. So it gets written off. It's called set off, where Canada thereby pays the bank the loan you took out. So the bank could still get paid.
Oh, the bank still makes their profits no matter what.
Yeah,
but they get it anyway no matter
yeah,
what.
They'll always get their money, yeah.
They get it no matter what.
But now the bank, now Canada pays off that loan.
The banks get it too when it comes to mortgages. If a bank mortgages
yeah.
your house
Don't even-
and you renege on it, you don't finish paying, the bank seizes it back.
Yeah, and they get to start the whole process all over again.
Which would be okay if that was the only deal, but there's not. See, there's a penalty fee, and the government actually goes good for that and pays them. Then they get the house anyway. So to them, they lend you the money. Most of it's fictitious. I think what was it? We 1 to 24.
Place, yeah.
Right, it's fictitious anyway. It's just stuff that they've made up. They lend it to you, made up numbers. You pay and pay and pay 5-6 years into it. Then you renege on the mortgage. So your mortgage for $100,000, which you figure after 5-6 years should be down to about 80, is only down to about 92, 93 at best case scenario.
Yeah.
Because all the interest rate,
Interest
which is fine. That's also the reason why banks renew every 5 years, is because then they can re-hit you with the new start with the new interest rate. You know, they'll never really get out of debt at that rate. But anyway,
No.
excuse me. If you renege on it, the government pays a penalty to the bank for it.
I didn't know.
They get their lion's share of their money back from that. Plus, they get the house
Yeah.
to start the whole process
Start
again.
over again, yeah.
And that's where my thing is. You should be able to go to the government, like say, for instance, the Nova Scotia home with Nova Scotia property in Nova Scotia. I should be able to go to the Nova Scotia government and get my mortgage through them. And just for arbitrary numbers, you know, or fictitious numbers here for simplicity to get the ball rolling in thought process. If I'm taking the $50,000, I can agree to pay $25,000 or $30,000 more. So we'll say I want to pay back the government $75,000 for my $50,000 mortgage. It's going to be a set amount of dollars over a set amount of years. If prime goes up, it doesn't matter. It's set. If interest rates go down, it's set. This is what I'm paying. This is what I've agreed to pay. Here's what it is.
Yeah.
And everyone says, well, you don't want to use common people's dollars. And I've heard this one already before from someone. I don't want my tax dollars going for your damn mortgage. Well, you're really not. Because in the end, they're going to get all the money back anyway, because if I renege on the mortgage to the bank, the government pays. So, or at least a good, fair chunk of it. So your dollars are really gone anyway in that case. But at least in this case, if I renege, it goes to being owned by Nova Scotia, which in turns could sell the home and property. And if there's still a debt, then I still owe money to the government. If there's an above and beyond, what happens now is they take the bank, they resell the house for $175,000 again, right, or whatever amount. I don't get any of that money back because even though it was my home that was taken, type deal, right? Nope, I've walked out. It's done. At least with the province, if you didn't want to keep screwing over your people, because let's face it.
What happens when the government starts owning all the property in the province, though?
Well, technically they do anyway, because it's supposed to be Nova Scotia properties owned by Nova Scotia.
Yeah, I know.
And in this case right now, it's 5 major corporations. The banks own all of it almost.
Yeah.
And what they don't own is Crown, but they have control over
You
it.
don't even own your own property. If you read your deed, you're not the owner. You are a tenant on your own land.
As long as you keep paying for it.
Yeah, you don't own that.
That's why you pay property taxes for things that you don't actually get for service.
Yeah. No, nobody owns their land in this country. It's a common misconception that you do, but you don't.
No. There are benefits to renting because it's somebody else's problem. But anyway, at least at that point in time, though, when the government took the land back, they could sell it. And if you're down to own $50,000, but they sell the property for $100,000, well, the $50,000 goes back for what you owed on it, and then the other half should be split, I think, half and half between the province taking it for the administration side and bonuses for, and the other half should go to the person that originally owned it. And that way they're not going out on their feet, because most likely if someone stopped paying the bills because they can't afford to rent away, and you're leaving them high and dry, and they're going to be on the welfare system or whatever relatively soon, and then you're riding them forever anyway. So at least this way here, you can give them a chunk back and maybe get them back on their feet and get them going again, because I think a province or a country's government should be like a set of parents, and that is, if you can't give everything you want to your children or to the people, you should at least leave them better off than what the generation before had from them. And you do that by educating them more, having them set more financially. Like in my case, I have, with my kids and stuff like that, right? At a certain age, I bought my home. I want to be able to make sure each of my kids have a home by that certain age, if at all possible. Giving them the same chance that I did to get out of debt faster or get ahead faster or whatever else, and possibly even sooner than that if possible, so that the idea is to advance them further.
That's right.
And I think with either free education or loans or mortgages and stuff like that, it'd be the same idea. And people are like, well, yeah, but look at the, how much money would that take? Well, I'm going to use Nova Scotia. There's 900,000 people in Nova Scotia. Take out the extreme elderly and or enfeebled, those that are no longer in the right state of mind to be able to own homes, etc., and stuff like that, dementia, etc., because we have an aging population, some of it.
Yeah.
The young.
Big around here, actually.
Yep, we have a lot of the young and children. Obviously, each of my kids are not going to own a house. So you take out the population like that, you knock the population down to only a couple 100,000 that are eligible to own homes. Now take into account couples, as opposed to, like me and my wife, we don't each need to own a house. We own a house, etc. It drops the numbers down drastically. And if these guys, like I said, can take $120 million and spend it on one business to keep 80 or 100 people employed for a few years, how many mortgages could be covered and bought up this way?
Yeah.
Starting with the lower level ones at that, those of lower income or those of lower mortgages size, could be bought up with just $100 million. I mean, and yeah, $100 million is a big chunk of chink. I'm not just using just, but in our monetary system amongst governments, $100 million really isn't that big deal, especially when you can throw $40 million away on 2 years of a boat.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, mortgages would start paying back pretty fast, and you also got to realize of that $100 million, we'll say, and now I'm using $100 million, it could be $50 million, it could be $10 million, whatever.
Yeah.
Of that chunk of money that you pay out, starting 1 month later, some of that's coming back in payments.
That's right. Already.
And you know the set amount you're going to make off of it for interest over a 10-year period or a 15-year period, we'll say. And yeah, there's some finer details to be worked out. You could limit it to 10, 15, or 20-year mortgages only, or less than if it's a smaller amount. If someone, like, for instance, if someone only owes a mortgage of 10 grand or less, don't bother to switch them over to you.
Yeah, really.
Right?
Yeah.
Or you could and just clear them up faster, because the idea, and this is like this would be like an economic boost, I think, or stimulant. They keep talking about the trickle down or the stimulants.
Yeah.
Well, name a better stimulant package than all of a sudden people not having mortgages over their head, chewing up their dollars, leaving the province.
That's right.
I mean, if I pay $300 or $500 a month of mortgage, right? That company isn't paying taxes on it to the government like you or I would. That's on our income and stuff like that. It's all chewed up with loopholes and stuff. But all of a sudden now, if I'm not paying that anymore because I'm paid off in, say, 10 years instead of 20 years, just for numbers, or I'm paid off in 8 years instead of 15 years, that means within 8 years, the fact that I've paid back all the money, I've actually given interest rate of, well, on a 50,000, we'll say it's $25,000 more, which isn't a big amount, but if you have 500 people doing that, then all of a sudden you start getting some big chink each year coming back above and beyond.
That's right.
And for the first little while, you can then in turn reinvest that $5 million or whatever it works out to be a year right back into doing more. So eventually you get everybody onto it. But as soon as my mortgage is gone, do you think I'm going to pull a Donald Trump and just start hoarding the money into like $1 billion in the bank?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No. I'm not going to put millions and millions in the bank and sit on it.
You're going to live your life, yeah.
That $300 or $500 is then going to go into renovations, which means I'm paying for material and labor. I'm paying for people to come to the house and fix the problems. I'm putting the money back in the economy. Right. I'm going to the movies with my wife and kids. Right. I'm going on vacations. I'm buying the gas, which is outrageously overpriced.
Ridiculous.
Talk about outrageous raping of the people. Gas prices.
It's ridiculous.
Price per barrel right now should put us at 72 cents a liter. $1.14. Oh, and we're going to do you guys good because we're not going to raise it this week. I mean, come on now, guys. If you need that much money to keep the top dogs flowing, we have too many top dogs. Time for a few of them to find a new kennel.
It's going to get worse.
Oh, it's going to keep getting worse.
It's going to keep getting worse, yeah.
But it all comes down to the point is I'm going to spend my money on more material items or on more frivolous and fun items and things.
Or services, yeah.
And services and goods and stuff like that. And it's going to put that money right back in because I'm still paying the same income tax on it. But now I'm paying Brian to paint my house. He's paying income tax on that money coming in. And the paint I just bought, the store is going to pay on it. And. So the money's going back in the economy. It's re-stimulating it that way. As opposed to me dumping it to one of the 5 or 6 major banks, which is taking it, saying, gee, I gave you a loan of $50,000. I actually only had $5,000 in the bank. which I don't think it's that much, but technically, but I'm going to give you a loan of 50. You've paid back 50, but now that means I can lend out 5 million. Eventually, someone's got to turn around and say, boop, I just pushed the button, the big magnet goes up, and all your computers are no longer recording this. So where's your real dollars?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they're going to be sitting there going, oh boys, I got bum wiped in the vault.
I got one of those, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's going to happen, it's going to crash.
Oh, it is.
And I think it's going to be bad when it does, but that's a someday thing. But these are little ways that on a province could fix the problem. And that way too, if the property that is taken isn't owned by one of the major 5 corporations that aren't even in the same province, and most of the time not even in the same damn country.
Yeah.
Right? With the controlling factor. Then it's Nova Scotians, and I'm using this province in particular because this is where I'm from. Nova Scotians paying with Nova Scotians to help Nova Scotians to get money back from Nova Scotians to pay for Nova Scotia. Go figure.
Yeah. I don't think you'd ever get that to roll through. Like, what you'd be doing is you'd be taking the power of property and mortgages, which is almost what economies are based on, and you'd be taking that out of the power of the banks, and you'd be giving it to the power of the people, the provinces again.
Not completely though,
it's pretty
because
close, you'd never get away with it. They would never let you.
You could do it on a small.
Never
I'm sure they'd find a way to try to scream and holler about it, but
yeah.
like any other business, just tell them to fucking off.
I mean, you're taking away basically their bread and butter. That's what banks' bread and butter is, mortgages.
Yeah, but they get a lot more competitive, wouldn't they? I love how they do this too with banks. Like in school, I remember going to high school. It was a wonderful experience. Not really, like everybody else. We didn't really. Most of the time, you don't really enjoy it. It's parts of it you like, and the rest of it you hated.
Yeah.
But I was sitting in class. It was an economics class. It was wonderful. And the teacher says to me, RSPs, wonderful things to invest into. And I asked him, why? Well, it's because the payouts are good. Yeah, but no. Well, tell me why. Tell me how it's good. Explain to me how when I'm 65 or 70.
The mechanics. Like,
yeah. And give me all the details here. And it was, I ain't got time to teach all that there. And then it dawned on me. It wasn't that he had time. It was because someone was paying someone to make him say, it is good. Don't question how and why. Just do what you're told. It is good. Give money to the banks.
Yeah, give money to the banks.
It was the same idea with mortgages and everything else. It works this way because we're telling you it works this way.
Yeah.
And all that is the biggest kid in the corner screaming loud enough to nobody else wants to hear what's being said anymore, so they just believe it.
Yeah.
You lie so much you believe yourself, and it's the same thing. You tell the population enough of it, and after a while, they're going to believe you on it.
Cognitive dissonance, really.
Yeah. So, do I think it would take away from them? No. Not enough, because it would make them be competitive. Well, it's the same thing. You used to invest in...
They don't want to be competitive, though.
No, they don't have to. They have monopolies.
That's
Well,
right.
they don't have a monopoly. They have a shared monopoly between 5 major groups.
Yeah, exactly.
How convenient they all have the exact same figuring on what they need to make, so they all release the same day, the exact same figures. But there's no insider information there.
No.
It used to be you invested your money in the bank. You had $500, and you were proud because you worked your couple summers and you raised $500 and you kept it under your mattress and you took it out your mom's cookie jar and under the books in the corner and out your dirty sock drawer that no one wanted to root through, and you took it into the bank and you put it there. And the teller looked at it like it was kind of funny because it still smelled like dirty socks.
Yeah.
And they put it in the bank, and they gave you a bank book or online. Let's get to modern times, right, guys?
Yeah.
And then you left it there for the year, and at the end of the year, you didn't have $500 there. You had $550.
Yeah, maybe.
Or $530, whatever. This is a good thing. And that's what they teach you at school. You put your money in the banks. When asked why you put the money in the banks, because that's what you do.
Yeah.
Why? Because that's what you do.
Yeah.
Okay, now you put your money in the bank. They don't give you $35 interest in the run of the year. They give you $3 in interest in the front of the year.
Yeah.
Okay. The problem is they've charged you $4.25 a month in banking and service fees to use their banking facility.
Yeah.
So I've now paid the banks anywhere between $35 and $55 or $155 a year
to take my money,
to use their bank, to put my money in there, because we're told we have to put money in there because it's a good thing.
For them to use
good
it.
Good thing for who?
Yeah, for them to use it, exactly.
And make up fictitious numbers to give people.
They just use that money and they gamble it.
Yep.
That's what they do with it.
So I have an issue with that. We really need to rethink our education system when we're teaching people. It's a good thing to do. Why? Because it's what we've always done before.
Yes.
But we have no idea how the fuck it works.
That's
But it's better.
That is horrible, yeah. Doing things because that's the way it's always been done is just horrible.
Now that brings me on to a topic, though, I want to get in, which is, if the government makes something happen or tells you through laws and statutes or whatever that it has to happen, they should damn well have to provide it. Example being, we've been talking about banking and stuff like that, and Brian mentioned earlier about getting your GST or income tax back and get a return and stuff. Well, starting next year, you have to have a bank account so they can do direct deposit if you're getting money back.
From anything from the government? Like?
Anything from the government. Family allowance, it's supposed to be pensions, it's supposed to be anything that comes from the government by next year is supposed to be into a direct deposit. Because and they'll present this to the public and to you or I and to Joe Blow down the corner and everything else, that this is going to save a lot of money because now there's no paper trail. And for those of us, or those people who are thinking,
maybe less crime too, maybe.
I don't give a damn, they're going to present less crime because no one can steal the check now because it's right in your account, except for the fact that identity theft and stealing people's banking information with those chip trackers. They can walk up and get near your phone and take it, or near your purse and take it. That's beside the point.
That's right, yeah.
Stop less crime. No, it won't. But anyway,
like shift it.
It'll save the environment because they're not cutting down all those trees to issue those checks.
That's true.
Which get signed off, get handed to the bank, and then go right into the recycling bin anyway after so many months sitting in the vault.
Right.
To make sure it's not been forged and changed.
Right.
Okay.
And it takes less people to process them, so you
Yeah.
might be able to fire a couple people.
Yeah, they can lay off a few more people.
Yeah.
Hey, and the more people they can lay off, it saves money in the system
Right, saves
that
money.
isn't actually going to be saved. It's simply going to go into paying for more fucking pensions or higher rates.
Yeah, yeah.
Nurses have to go on strike to get a 1.2% raise or pension coverage, and the politicians sit in the House of Commons and talk about themselves, amongst themselves, at 3:30 in the morning when the place is mostly empty, but that's who happens to be there at the time, and then they pass the bill saying it's going up 16%.
Yeah.
And no one can question it.
Yeah.
Why can't anybody question it? Because you can't fight City Hall.
Yeah, we passed it.
Yeah, they passed it and we're stuck with it. Anyway, so the banks are telling you this is how it has to be, and you have to do it. So if the government is telling you have to have a direct deposit, which I'm not against, there are benefits to it.
Sounds like it has benefits.
As long as the benefits are actually used to the benefit of the people, not just the government pockets or the banks themselves.
That's right.
Anyway, that's great and dandy. Except for the fact that, how often do you use your bank account? I pay my mortgage or mine.
Yeah.
Great. But now I have to have a bank account even if I don't have one.
And they're not really free.
At whatever rate the bank tells me I have to use it for.
Yeah.
Now it might only be a couple dollars a month or $5 a month, but why am I going to be paying $60 a year
Yeah.
to use a banking system that the government's telling me I have to get my money back if it happens to be a return or
anything.
or anything for that matter. And I'm using me for an example because I'm the one sitting here in front of the camera talking, but for that matter, if you get someone on the lowest of incomes living off $8,000 or $9,000 a year, $60 could be
Can be a
an
make or
awful
breaker.
big
That's right.
breaker on whether you are warm this winter or you have food in your belly or
right.
whatever else. Whether your kids have clothes on their ass to go to school with, or stay home because, well, their one pair of pants they have just got ripped. You can't buy another pair until next week when the check comes in. Right, $60 makes a difference. It can make a big difference, and even if it can't make a difference, it's still the person's fucking dollars,
That's
and they
right.
shouldn't be lost.
Principle of the thing, anyway.
If the government makes it mandatory, it has to happen. The government should have to provide, if not give it to you for free, should at least provide a reasonable price chosen by the public equivalent. Example being, they provide a government account that can be accessed through any of the 5 major terminals at no expense to the customer.
Yeah.
As in, they go in, they access my account, they check my ID, yeah, I'm the right person, I cash the check and away I go. And then the bank can then deal with the government for their $1 or try to tell the government, you owe me $5 for using this. In which case the government really should tell them, fuck off, here's your 50 cents. Or nothing for that matter. But
Nothing.
if you want the privilege of doing business in our country, then there you go.
Really, we shouldn't have to pay for it at all. We should just be able to get the account, like you said, like a government account that we don't have to pay for. And it's not like the bank's losing out or anything. A, it's electronic, and B, they're gonna get side business from it anyway.
Eventually,
Now, if every single Canadian has to have a bank account, that's just more opportunity for the banks
to rape and pillage.
to sell you side services anyway. So they shouldn't have to charge you to get your money from the government. I agree.
No, I think it should be,
Yeah.
you get your social insurance number, you get a bank account.
Yeah, get a bank account. Just a government one that can only be used, say, for that purpose.
Yeah,
maybe.
you're only allowed a couple deposits or withdrawals a month, and
Right.
that's it. And you can stockpile money only for so long in there or something.
Right, exactly.
And then the point is, and that's only one example. You got to have car insurance to drive a car.
Yeah.
But yet, private companies can charge what they feel is right amongst themselves. Which,
Yeah.
how convenient! It's all really close to exactly the same. No one ever really competes. Why don't they compete? Because they don't have to, because they know everyone's going to charge it.
That's
Because it's mandatory by law and statute to do it. You have to have house insurance if you have. You got to have this. You got to have. It's all mandatory, yet none of it's provided by the people that are telling you it's mandatory.
Yeah, exactly.
This is, in my opinion, bullshit.
Bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah. If they're going to make it mandatory, they got to provide it. As far as I'm concerned. And well, that's just my opinion. I'm sure, and I would love to hear from anybody.
Yeah.
Our email's up there, so feel free to email and we'll check into that and see. And
I'll definitely argue with you.
well, we might even agree with you.
Maybe.
And for that matter, believe it or not, at least I am reasonable enough to look at something with an open mind and possibly admit that a few points that you bring up, though couldn't be more right, could at least be different, and therefore something I haven't looked at that way.
Yeah.
How's that sound?
Yeah.
Nah, I could just plain be fucking wrong, but until someone can actually write it and prove it or say it or explain to me in a way that makes sense, I'm going to assume I'm not.
Yeah, it's true. I'm always going to assume I'm right.
Well, we all do this nature of humans.
Yeah.
I'm not right about everything I ever do, but until I'm taught differently or shown differently or proven differently, then my opinion got to be right.
Just got to be open to those other possibilities.
It's like anything else. You know, if your mind's closed, then it's not going to work right.
Yeah, you're done anyway.
So I've talked a little bit, and Brian and I wrote loans and student loans. If it's not going to be free, should be paid for, and how Canada is really behind the 8 ball. Wake the fuck up here, please, and get on board here. Because last time I checked, Switzerland and Sweden, they're all doing pretty good economically. You know, Denmark and stuff like that. They're not exactly,
they are
starving in the streets and bare ass in the fields trying to grow a potato to sell to the next door neighbor to get enough food to keep warm in the winter. Like, you know,
that's right.
I'm not saying everyone's driving golden Porsches and you know, drinking out of golden goblets here and silver spoons, but
exactly.
the economy is, well, they're not sinking in. I haven't seen this fictitious Satan come out of the ground and start swallowing the country whole, so obviously they're not doing something wrong.
They're doing pretty
It's
good.
just different. So we should look into this here and see, in my opinion. Same idea with mortgages. There's an idea out there, or even loans. This crap of having to go through banks with fluctuating prices and fluctuating payback. No, if you go to the board of a bank of $5,000, you should have the option to have a set amount to pay back.
You should know what it is all the time.
And you shouldn't be penalized if you pay earlier. Like, what the hell is here at the bank? You get a mortgage, and knock on wood,
You're not allowed to pay it.
I really hope that it doesn't happen, but you get a mortgage and you come into a windfall of money. A family member, a friend, something like that passes on, leaves you, I don't know, $100,000. And all of a sudden you're looking at $100,000 going, woo, I can go get drunk and forget all about the loss of my friend. You'll never forget about him, so therefore you don't. I'm going to pay off my mortgage. You go in to pay off your mortgage, and instead of saying, great, you've paid off the mortgage, what I've lent you, and I've already made some interest off, nope, I'm going to penalize you now.
Yeah.
And so, but it's not a penalty because a penalty sounds dirty to banks. I'm going to charge you an administration fee.
Yeah.
An administrative fee of, well, in my case, my house did burn down, and I had to pay it off with the insurance money that came in, because that's something that you have to have insurance with a mortgage, and it's first paid to the bank until the mortgage is paid full. So no matter what you have for insurance, the check isn't sent to you and then you get to walk away with it and spend it where you want to and leave the bank high and dry. It has to be paid to the bank. They take out their chunk for the mortgage. And in this particular case, they wanted an additional $1,600. And I asked them why. Well, you're paying off your mortgage early. And I said, well, okay then. I won't bother to pay off my mortgage. I will use the money to build the new house on the same property, same everything. And I'll just keep paying my mortgage normally to you as if I was just on the old house. But the difference is I'll have a much newer house.
Right.
And life will be good. No, you have to pay it off because you could renege and walk away. I understand the logic there. So I said, okay, I'll pay off what's left remaining. Plus the $1,600. Why am I paying $1,600? Because you're paying it off early. I'm not paying it off early. You're calling it in early.
Yeah.
Same thing, only to you, not to me.
Yeah.
So anyway, we argued it out, and 6 weeks later, when they realized they weren't going to get a fucking dollar because I wasn't going to cash the check, I was just going to keep renewing it every 6 months and say, God damn it, have them issue me a new one, until we had this all hashed out. And by that point in time, I planned to have the new house built anyway, in which case I was going to tell them to go fuck off because there's no money.
Yeah.
They finally come to an agreement that they wouldn't charge me an administration fee if I promised to do my next mortgage, because they knew I was going to need a mortgage with somebody, to rebuild the house because the amount of money I was getting from the insurance wasn't enough, right? If I went to them.
Huh.
But yet, if they hadn't took the big chunk of money for the mortgage and just let me have it, so I could have shopped the sales and bought the materials on sale and did it over the year, I could have built the house with still the same remaining mortgage. But this way, they were able to restart the new mortgage at the new start of the year, and therefore start collecting the uber high interest rate at the very beginning, and then toward the end of the 5 years, you're actually paying more on the principal.
Yeah.
But then they hit the 5 year mark and they renew it again, and you start again.
Yeah.
This was, I mean, you have to be blind not to see it. And yeah, some people argue, well, if you don't like it, don't get a fucking mortgage from a bank and use their money. That's what my point is.
Yeah.
There should be a government option to go to.
Yeah, what else is there? Like, you can't do
And then at
anything
that point in time, if the banks want your mortgages and your money, they'd actually have to compete like a business that they really are, which is, I'm providing a service for X number of dollars, or vice versa in goods. So let's make this happen. Right now, they have a government-forced monopoly on you with no rhyme or reason or no set rules on how to, except for the fact that don't rate the top dogs of the government and they'll let you do what they want to the common people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I see issues with that. There's better ways to use tax-paying dollars to fix issues.
Yeah, I agree.
It's the same idea. They're talking about twinning the highways in Nova Scotia, all the way to Yarmouth, right? Different sides and stuff like that. And they're talking about putting up toll booths to pay for it. Tolls. Yes, because that way we're not paying for it for the next 25 or 30 years. It'll be paid for in, 7 years or something like that, or 10 or 5. I said, okay. My only problem with that is, I'm assuming at that point in time you're taking all the taxes off the gas that we buy because
that's what that
we
money is
already
for.
pay.
Right.
Now, they say, well, it's not enough. Well, in actuality, if you look into it, it's more than enough to pay for the highways, to maintain the highways, and to expand the highways. The problem is the government takes large chunks and swaths of the money off of it to pay for other things. And now, don't get me wrong, they're awesome at prettying it up, Brian. They'll do things like, we're going to pay for this, and we're going to pay for that service. We're going to put some more money into education because we need it. Well, why is the education money so short? Well, because we used it to pay for the hospitals.
Yeah.
Okay, so why is the hospital money so short? Well, because we used to pay for the new ferry. Well, why is the ferry money so short? Because we used to pay for this. And in the end, if you actually follow it all the way back and get past, you're either going to start in the exact same circle.
Yeah.
And provided you can actually get the truth out of the last person, it's going to be because we're spending all kinds of money now on even more government officials, positions, and pensions.
And there's one thing that they could never agree
And that
on
comes out first.
is where the money did actually truly go in the end. Like, they'll never tell you that.
Well, but in the end, it's because they're pensions.
Yeah.
And if you look at the end of the year, it's not, we have to put this much to education, we have to put this much to hospitals, we have to put this much into highways, we have to put this much into towards more development, or here's your 8 or 10 or 100,000 items we got to put into. It's, we have to take care of the pensions and the paychecks of the government officials. Then we have to take care of the pensions and or paychecks of the government employees. What do we got left? Okay, now we have to divvy that up amongst the other 500 things that the province needs.
Yeah.
Well, we ain't got enough money.
Well,
Stop taking for the top dog first.
yeah.
Take care of what has to be taken care of, and if that means the top dogs don't have enough, it's because they're not balancing things the right way.
Yeah.
I also can't understand how the hell a government ever chooses to function in the red continuously. Continuously, like,
Well, it's the monetary
you can't.
That's the monetary system's
oh, we can go to the bank and get more money. Yeah, but we're never allowed to pay it back. It's the same
Yeah.
thing as the government to the banks,
Yeah.
as we are.
It's ridiculous.
Like, it makes no sense. But if you started doing little things, and I mean on and if you need to sneak it past the banks or whatever else, do it on a low-income subsidy level first. Make it a low-income subsidy for mortgages. So if you make under $20,000 or under $25,000 a year, you're, instead of going to the banks, you're allowed to go to the government for your mortgage or your student loan. I wouldn't get into business loans and everything else with that same style. I'm just picking these two because that, I think, would stimulate the economy the fastest because, A, it gets students or people that are trying to further their education out of debt faster, therefore those dollars going back in the economy faster, or instead of just going to a banking institute or a loan institute and leaving the province and or country. And it's the same thing for mortgages. It would put those dollars right back in. For instance, if you lend Brian $50,000 for a house, I'm just picking numbers, Brian, and $50,000 means $100,000 lent. But each month, we're each paying back $400 toward it. That's $800 a month going back in there it's gonna come back pretty fast. Now, don't get me wrong; it's gonna take a while for the $100,000 to get paid back. You know, your 10 years or 20 years or whatever it works out to be, 15. But you're not just paying back the 50,000 each. You've agreed to pay back 75, we'll say.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people scream and holler right off the bat, 75,000 on a 50,000 mortgage. What are you talking about? Like that's look at what you're actually going to pay back on a $50,000 mortgage to a bank.
Yeah.
When you're done paying
compound interest. Yeah.
on compound interest, when you're done paying, you're in the 90s if you're lucky.
Mine went from like 56 to 90 something.
I think we figured out when
brutal.
this was a couple of years back, and for a $50,000 mortgage, it was no hiccups, no problems, no major fluctuation up or down, because it's always prime, like the 2.1 or the 2.9, sorry, or the 3.1% that they're offering is always plus prime.
Yeah, I always get mine fixed.
So did I, but that ain't the point. But in 10 years, when mine comes due, or 8 more years now, when mine comes due, they're going to be able to hit me with whatever's left, whatever they want, and I'm stuck with it because I've already paid for 10 years. And I'm thinking, I can pay for another 10 years and I'll be out. Yeah. It won't be.
No. You know, another interesting thing about the idea of province taking over mortgages would be, I read somewhere, I never verified it, but I read somewhere that said that there are more empty homes in America right now
Yeah, you mentioned that
than
there.
there are homeless people, which means that if the government really wanted to, it could just pay off those mortgages or just take over those properties, give them to the homeless people, and start just charging them rent on them or anything. Just ignore whatever's owing on them, call all the debts even on all those buildings that are empty, and then just start filling them with people and let them start paying on them. At least somebody would be paying on those
And at least somebody would make some money somewhere.
Right, and it'd be coming back to the government. Like,
yeah, that was in the States. I mentioned that last week too, but but it's the same idea. So I mentioned a few things from last week or 2 weeks ago there. It's the same idea. But
that would be income for all the government. All of a sudden, these people would have homes. They would be maybe able to start getting employment, and all the money that's going into those houses, instead of going to the banks, now goes right actually back into the government again. Yeah.
Yep. But like you said earlier, you know your 5 banks ain't going to let that happen.
No, that's just
I just don't understand how they can stop it. And don't get me wrong here on this, right? People say, well, you don't understand economics. No, correction. Let's clear that up. I don't understand the sheeple version of economics when the sheep masses believe this is how it has to be, even though I don't understand how it works, because I'm told this is how it has to be.
You know, economics
Denmark
is complicated.
It is.
The monetary system is extremely simple. The monetary system, how it works, is extremely simple. The economy is really complicated. Where the money goes after it's created, the actual creation and the use of our money is very simple. It's just made to sound complicated. The economy is complicated. What happens to the money once it gets to the real world is different, but
it's kind of odd. But it's only odd because we allow someone to step in and say this is now a stage.
Yeah.
That wasn't there 20 years ago, but it's there now.
Yeah.
And because no one really understands anymore or wants to understand, as long as they're getting their chunk of it, they let it go. But in the end, you're right. I don't understand certain levels of economics, and the certain levels I don't understand is why do you simply allow yourself to be told this is how it has to be, not why it has to be.
Yeah.
And as for the banks, what's the worst going to happen? We've seen countries when the banks failed, and they said, you bail us out or else.
Yeah.
And the government said, what to them?
Get it?
You fail.
Yeah.
It's a business like everything else. And when they collapsed, it was social economic ruin for millions of people. Well, last time I checked, these countries aren't starving. They still got clothes on their ass, and they're doing great.
They bounce back.
Because what did they do? They let the banks fail. They forgave half the mortgages, or everyone's mortgage in the country, as an example, if you're a homeowner, became half. All loans became half. Because it was all fictitious money the bank made up anyway.
Bullshit.
And the bank couldn't call it all in because it didn't have enough to cover what was being done with it anyway, so it all collapsed. And our banks ain't no better. I'll tell you right now, guys, if you think they're better or they're different because we have a maple leaf on our flag, or you have stars and stripes and they're pretty colors of red, white, and blue, which, you know, the banks are the same, guys, and they're the exact same banks.
It all came from England.
It all fell there, and it's going to eventually fall here. And if it doesn't, it's because we just let it drag on and fuck us more. But they forgave all these things. And within a couple of years, the country's actually doing way better than what we are now. With free educations and with mortgages that are paid off. Why? Because if people weren't working their cornholes off every day simply to pay an outside organization more money that are allowed to up their fees and up their rates and up their banking costs and up their whatever interest they want to charge you at their whim, Like the contract used to be, you borrowed this much money, you pay back this much money, this is agreed upon. Now it's so many loopholes, and the fine print actually tells them, but we can change this contract whenever we feel like it on you, and you're screwed.
And you're gonna have to come back every couple of years and do this over again, anyways.
And we allow it, and the government allows it, and I don't understand why they allow it. And people say, well, because the government's in debt to the banks. Yes, they are.
Yes, they are.
They're big time in debt. They're to the point that if everyone made everything for the next year in the province of Nova Scotia and gave all their dollars to the government, I still don't think they could pay off the debt to the banks, because the banks would simply change the formula so they're making more anyway.
Did you know that if we actually, in the real world, like for example, it's a theory, whatever, but if every one of us paid back every single dollar in production, that includes paper money and the money that's in our banks, okay, digital money and physical money. If we paid every single bit of it back to the banks, what we owe them, there would be A, no money in circulation, the country would stop, and B, we would still owe the interest. That's what would happen right now. Our system is designed that it's protected itself. You can't fix the system the way the system's designed, because even if you did pay back all the money you owe, well, now the country has no money, can't do anything. And even if you did pay back all the money you owe, you still owe the interest, and you have no physical money to pay back anymore anyway. You've given it all back to pay the principal.
It's gathered the interest before the principal, and then...
Right, so I mean, that's not just as a human being.
I had a credit card like that once.
Loans, that's the country. Our country runs that way.
I had a MasterCard like that once. With one of the companies.
Absolutely.
And we called them up, how much is owed as of right now. You owe this much. I transfer the money from the bank account right over to them. And then I get a bill the next month for like $1.75. Like, what the hell is this? That was the interest.
Right.
But I called, I worked out the exact amount owed. Yes, but it takes 3 days for the bank's money to transfer. It takes 3 days for digital dollars to go from one digital device to another digital device.
Yeah.
Bullshit. But anyway.
that's due to
and the interest that collected on that card in those 3 days I still owed. And it was designed that you could never, ever pay it off. So I did a reconciliation thing with the bank, and they paid it off at the bank. The bank worked it out dollar for dollar, penny for penny, interest, anything else, contacted the company, and I still got a bill in the mail the next month because I owed something like 79 cents or something stupid. So I went to the bank and told them what's going on. They're like, well, you can't have that card and that account open because you've agreed to get rid of it in order for the reconciliation, get yourself sorted out. This was like many years ago. I said, okay. So I said, well, here's $5. I owe 75 cents. I know the interest is not going to be that. Put $5 onto it. So they put onto it. Now they owed me a credit.
That's right.
You know, that company for 3 years straight, instead of paying me a check for the credit to square it off and end it, because they were so desperate to keep that card and that account open, they sent me a monthly statement for 3 years straight telling me they owe me a credit. Not a penny of interest was gained, mind you, on the money they had on that credit. Like all the pennies they would have charged up if it had been a debit instead of a credit.
Yeah.
But for 3 years. Till they finally wrote me a check. And at the end, though, when it was all said and done with the administration fee and with this and with that, they had to write me a check for something like 26 cents. Now, to be spiteful at this point in time, because they were just fucking with my credit because they wanted to have control, I stuck that on my fridge, and 6 months later, just under 6 months, because checks last 6 months in circulation before they have to be, I called and said it was damaged, they needed to issue me a new one. And I did that 4 times to them. Before I told them, said, now how does it feel? How much have you spent?
Yeah.
How does it feel? Now, don't get me wrong. It didn't mean anything to them in the long run. And then by the end, the person I was talking to worked at a call center who really didn't give a fuck, because they were being paid $12 an hour or $10 an hour at the time to sit, take the call, say, okay, press the button, sip it on, and go on with your life and go home at the end of the day, drink beer and eat pizza.
Yeah.
Right? Go to the beach and forget about it and pet your dog. But the point was, I felt good about it for a little while.
I got a funny story actually similar to that. Back in the day, I used to live in a boarding house that had a payphone, and if you were desperate, you could call 411 and say, this machine lost my quarter. Can you just put me through, right? And after a while, they'd catch on to that, just as a company as a whole. And you know what they started doing? They would say, well, if you give me your name and address, we'll send you a quarter in the mail. So I would give them my name and address, and then I would hang up and just call 411 back and try again. Eventually, I'd get through, but I had forgot about it. And then like 3 weeks later, I started getting letters in the mail with just an envelope with a piece of paper and a quarter taped to it. The stamp was 50 cents. The stamp was 50 cents plus the 25 they just gave me. 75 cents to stop me from
Plus a
getting
couple
one.
pennies for the envelope.
Right, yeah, right. All that to stop me from getting one phone call for free on my payphone. Like, it reminds me of the government. It almost reminds me of the government. It's kind of the way they operate.
Yeah, they'll put it into a loss. But no, I think if the governments are, like I said, if they're making things mandatory, insurances because of legals and laws. And don't get me wrong, guys. I'm not saying you shouldn't have car insurance if you're driving, or you shouldn't have house insurance against fires and da da da. They have to at least step in and have the control so you can't be raped for it.
Yeah.
And I use that term, and I probably shouldn't because rape is a very serious matter to anybody it's ever happened to. I do not mean in any way to lessen what happened to you in comparison to losing a few dollars to the government daily or these companies, right? But in the end, it's the same idea. They're pillaging, they're stealing, they're robbing from you, and it's forced by the government and whatever else. But that brings me on to a topic that I think is one that's going to come up here real soon, especially with the elections coming and stuff like that. And my opinion, I'm going to throw it out here, something to think about for until the next show. Brian, here, I'll dump it on you because I know I haven't dumped on you yet. And that is, I don't think the government, be it provincial or federal, should be allowed to pass a damn law unless the people have voted on it.
Yeah.
End of story.
And then it should be more than 49 to 51%.
You know what? Though I agree with Brian, it should be a higher percentage rate. I think if you can get 51% of the population to agree to it, of a province, even as a step in the right direction, I'll take that for the first little while. I do agree it should be higher, but right now we have it that the select few that we elect, for whatever reason, and that's a lot of times not because we want to elect them, it's the lack of choices any other way but those. And if you don't bother to vote, they're still going to get in anyway. Someone is. Gets to make the final decision on how everything happens for everybody. But when it comes to laws, it really shouldn't be. If it's laws to protect the people, to govern people, and do the people, the people should have an actual direct say in it, not just a select few people thinking it's a good idea.
Absolutely.
Example being, and we'll get into a lot of these ones here later on, maybe even next week, some of that. But no law, and some people will argue, and it's the dumbest argument I've heard, but I would love to hear if you guys had to say it so I can bring it up, either read them or read them online and respond, or read them here on the camera and respond. Well, nothing would ever happen in the government. It would come to a complete standstill. I disagree. If that is your statement, I think you've put zero thought and effort into it.
Yeah.
Please go back and look into it more. But if that is your opinion, feel free to write me. I'll tell you, we can expand more into it to give me examples. But it isn't going to stop. It's simply going to stop stupid and redundant things from being passed, knee-jerk reaction. If you already got a law for something, you're not going to pass a whole nother law and go through a whole nother costly referendum or a whole voting system to see what's going to happen and tie up the government to do it. You're simply going to stop doing this stupid laws of every little nickel and dime thing that gives simply more power and authority to the government or to the law enforcement thugs that we call the police, and I'm not saying they all are bad, but they are part of a bad organization that works strictly as a money generator for the government.
They sure do.
If these laws can't be put into effect unless the public support it, or at least a fair number of the public support it, then we don't have to worry about whether the public's going to be happy with it or not, and there's no way to fight it. Simply, a law.
The public can be scared so easily. I can see how the public could easily vote in stupid stuff on their own.
I'm not saying they wouldn't do it, but I'm saying that it has to go to a vote every time instead of just 25 guys sitting together in the back room agreeing to it, go out and officially sit in the house, chit-chat about it back and forth to make it look like it's all set in stone. Yeah, we've done it. We've done the due process, and now here you go. It's law.
Yeah.
When it's already been decided, if they have to put it to the public every single time they want to pass a law, it's going to cost money.
Yeah.
And when all of a sudden they look back and come next election time and say, yeah, we spent $3.5 million trying to pass more laws that all but one got shot down. So we tried to pass 79 laws and only one of them made it through. Yeah. The rest of the public get to look back at the party and say, okay, maybe we do want your party back in as long as it's not you because you guys suck.
Yeah.
It's obvious you guys have screwed it up too many times now. So something to think on that there. I don't know how else to word other than government shouldn't be able to pass laws unless the people want it, because it's supposed to be the government. And though it's more of an American term, a government by the people for the people.
Yeah.
In the end, all governments, if it's supposed to be a democracy-based system, is supposed to be just that.
That's right.
We elect who we want, and it works our way up through. Unfortunately, with such large areas covered by certain politicians only, and the choices being pre-selected by the party only, not even by the local people in our area necessarily, etc. By the people for the people, doesn't work. So let's get some control back to the people, and you can't pass a law unless it's voted on. You can't implement new policies unless the people actually want it.
That's right.
Your job as our reps is to go out, convince enough of us we like the idea of it, which can and can't be done depending on how good the information is, etc.
That's right.
And then it can go forward. But it would get rid of a lot of the redundancy ones or knee-jerk ones, or the ones that are good for this government next time,
That's right.
but I know it's going to go against the next party
That's right,
and the party thereafter. But when we get back in again, it'll already be in effect and we'll be good to go.
Then it's just party politics. It's
Right.
nothing to do with people anymore.
And that's all we got now anyway. That about wraps it up for a Common Man's Corner this here time. Thank you very much for showing in. Emails up. Feel free to write us and throw the comments there. We'd love to hear back, read some back, email back to you. Be a little patient if you do email us. It might take us a little bit to get back to you on it, but we will, or do our best to. And see you next time.
Yeah, have a good night.